This is the new Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro, and today we are going to see how it stands up in terms of image quality, workflow, remote control connection, sound, lens choice, and whether this camera is for you or not. I'm Thibaut from Middle Things, and today we are going to find out. The design of the camera reminds us that of the previous generation Blackmagic Studio cameras. I find it very cool. It's unconventional, it's compact, it's modern, it's a bit heavy, so it's perfect for a studio camera, and this is how it looks next to other Blackmagic cameras like the Pocket 4K or the Ursa Broadcasts. Blackmagic chose some sort of light plastic material, so don't expect a rugged armored metal design, but for the price I think it's perfectly okay, and once attached to a tripod it's rock solid. Besides, as the name of the product suggests, this is not the kind of camera with which you are going to do some run and gun shooting and throw it in a car every 30 minutes. So the camera ships with a 12-volt power supply, a sun hood, 20 camera number stickers for the tally light, and a quick release tripod mount. The quick release mount is well built and it's easy to slide in. There are no end lock like many other quick release mounts, but I did try a few free-fall slide tests, and it turns out that the gravity of the camera prevents it from sliding completely. So you still have a small security. The quick release support is optional, so if you don't want to use it, you still have 2 1/4-inch screw holes and one bigger 3/8 screw hole at the bottom of the camera. Just like many other Blackmagic cameras, you can control the camera using an ATEM remotely. However, on this studio camera, there are 3 different ways you can control it. First, through HDMI by connecting the camera directly to an ATEM Mini, for instance. The second one is through SDI, if you bring the ATEM program SDI out to the camera SDI in connection, or through Ethernet if you use the Blackmagic Studio converter. Controlling this camera with an ATEM live production switcher gives you access to 4 major features. First, you can send tally information to each camera. The tally is this big light on top that will turn red when the camera is on air and green when the camera will be on air on the next shot. This way, each camera operator knows when to be very cautious about the framing, when to get ready because the director will take the shot soon, and when to relax. The studio camera has a big and nice tally light which you can dim and even turn off if you don't want to use it at all. The camera ships with 20 different number plates that you can easily replace, and that big light can be very useful for the ghost, the guest or the host currently speaking, since it gives real-time information on which camera to look at in case you want to talk directly to the viewers watching. Finally, it's worth noting that the tally will light in orange when the camera is recalling to a hard drive, but not on air or in preview. The next feature you will get if you connect your camera to the ATEM is remote camera control. Using Blackmagic's ATEM software control, you can adjust basic camera settings like gain, ISO, iris, white balance, focus, and more advanced settings such as primary color correction. This is invaluable for matching different camera sensors on set and therefore increasing your production value. You can either use the ATEM software with your mouse, or even use any USB gaming joystick if you use our own middle control software that we have created. You can assign your camera settings to different axes and buttons and control your camera this way with gaming joysticks. If you decide to add the Middle Things APC-R converter, you can also control the pan, tilt, and the zoom of the camera using a DJI gimbal as well. You will then have a precise control of all your framing remotely too. Third, this camera can be used as a TV, or at least as a monitor. Yes, if you connect this camera to your ATEM's program output using the SDI in connection of the camera operator will be able to watch the show live. It is also an invaluable tool to have when the director is pushing super source compositions, cropping the frame to make picture-in-picture layouts, or adding overlays, etc. Because then the camera operator can see the live feed and adapt to the framing very quickly. Now, I'd like to talk about an important aspect of this review, which is Talkback. So I was very happy to see two things. The first one is the 5-pin Talkback connector that allows you to use professional headsets. Another great feature is the Ethernet type Talkback connector at the back of the studio camera converter. This allows you to grab the audio Talkback signals that are coming out from the ATEM and send your own audio signals as well. Blackmagic started implementing this on the ATEM Constellation 8K, and I can tell you it's a very useful feature because it opens up the ability to mix the ATEM Talkback system with an external system. Let me explain. We like to use the popular wireless EarTech ultralight communication set on our team. But how can we send the audio of the show to the director headset in addition to the team communication that he already has? And how do we merge the EarTech wireless communications with the headsets that are directly connected to the Studio Pro 4K cameras? Well, we made a DIY adapter that connects the ATEM Talkback system to the external EarTech wireless system, using that very Ethernet type Talkback connection I talked a bit earlier. The director sits down, he connects his headsets to the ATEM. He or she can have the program audio as well as team communication in the same headset. The director can both communicate to team members that are on a wireless EarTech network and others that are connected to a Blackmagic camera, which itself is connected to the ATEM too. So yeah, I think it's a very nice move here. We use the noise cancellation headset, the Bose Soundcom B40, which works fantastic. Yeah, it's a bit pricey. At least for the director, it's very good value to have noise cancellation inside. In the Blackmagic setup page, the camera operator that has a headset plugged into the camera can adjust the volume of the program audio, the volume of the communications, and the side tone audio, which is the amount of audio of your own microphone that you hear in your own headset. The Pro model of the camera has plenty of connections. Two types of 12-volt power inputs, Ethernet, SDI in, SDI out, and 4K HDMI. On the other side are USB-C connections, full-size XLR audio inputs, 5-pin Talkback, and traditional jack microphone and headset connection as well. In case you are wondering, it is possible to have both SDI and HDMI connected at the same time. Just like other Blackmagic cameras, you can specify what overlays and indicators you want to send on which outputs, whether it is the RCD, the HDMI output, and the SDI output. And this can be remotely controlled from the control room if you use our Metal Control desktop app, which means that you can bring up the status display remotely when the camera is on preview on the HDMI out to check the settings remotely, the recording time left, etc. You can also bring up the zebra and the force colors remotely, for instance. Also, within the Blackmagic menu, you can specify if the HDMI output will be 4K or 1080p, and same thing for the SDI output. I really like the choice of the locking barrel 12-volt connector. I think it's much more practical than the uncommon Waipu connector on the Pocket 4K. The USB-C connections can be used for multiple tasks, including recording, connecting the zoom and focus remotes, and updating the firmware. And it is a lock-type USB-C connector. Very good choice from Blackmagic here. Now, recording. You cannot record internally inside the camera, but you can plug in a hard drive using a USB-C cable, and as long as you have formatted the drive in exFAT or HFS, it will record directly on the drive. I was a bit disappointed that you can only record in Blackmagic Raw Ultra HD. You can only adjust the compression level, so there is no ProRes recording and there is no lower resolution recording, which means that the files will be big and you will need a lot of storage for multi-camera shoots. Also, the Blackmagic RAW files will not retain the ATEM remote color shading information, such as contrast, saturation, etc. However, it is possible to record smaller files either by having multiple hyperdecs recording 1080p ProRes or using the ATEM Mini Pro ISO and Extreme ISO that can record each camera stream separately in an H.264 format on a hard drive. So you have multiple options here. Also, I didn't find a way to play back the recorded files directly on the camera screen. Other cameras usually have a play button in the Blackmagic ecosystem, so I don't think it's a big issue, but it would be cool for camera operators. Sometimes they want to watch the recordings during breaks on the 7-inch big screen when they want to. I find the screen really gorgeous. It's a 7-inch 1080p LCD with 2000 nit brightness, so it's very bright. The design is almost the same as the Ursa Studio viewfinder, which is already very good quality. I really like the brightness, contrast and focus peaking smooth knobs on the side, as well as the quick function buttons F1, F2, F3 on the side that you can custom map to any action using the camera menus. When you press the program PGM button, the screen will briefly show up the program feed too. After a bit of testing outdoors, I can confidently say the screen is bright enough and the included sunshade is very easy to attach. The menus are easy to use and it's a pleasure to scroll through. The cool thing is that young camera operators that are used to the Blackmagic OS on Pocket 4K and 6K cameras will be quickly familiar with the workflow of that Studio Camera Pro 4K. One drawback I found was that the screen is non-tiltable, so it's not an issue for studio use, for which the camera was primarily intended to be used as the studio name suggests, but for event type gigs, we often have situations where the camera will be a bit high and we have to tilt the camera screen or video assist down. So I think it's a bit of a downside here. Also, the LCD tends to get very hot in some places when the brightness is dialed in all the way to 100% after a couple of hours. I don't have enough field experience to say whether this will be a big issue or not, but yeah, that's something I noticed. But apart from this, it's a very good screen, and it's a good thing because good image quality deserves a good screen. At Middle Things, we're totally obsessed with high image quality. I feel Blackmagic has implemented exactly the same sensor and image processing that the one in the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. I did a few tests in different environments with both the Studio Camera 4K Pro and the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and when they share the same settings and the very same lens, the footage is nearly identical. I had a look at the B-roll files in Resolve and they indeed seem to have the exact same noise levels, the dual ISO features, etc. Of course, if I'm wrong on this, please correct me in the comments. I have no idea what sensor has been used in the two cameras and what image processing is in place here, so feel free to comment on that. Now, what I can say is that I have used the Blackmagic Pocket 4K very extensively on live production shoots these past few years, and on the field, the images are incredible and the low light sensitivity is very, very good. So it's very good news to see that sensor integrated in a live production camera from Blackmagic. So if you want to get a feel of the image you can get from the studio camera, I'd recommend you check YouTube videos that showcase Pocket 4K footage due to the similarities between the two sensors. Blackmagic has opted for micro four foot sensors, which I think is not a bad choice. EF and RF mounts are not really suited for live production because of the big sensors they have. With the MFT lens mount, you can use both MFT lenses and EF lenses too with a speed booster, so I think it opens up plenty of opportunities. If you're looking for good MFT lenses, I'd strongly recommend going over the Olympus 12-100 f4 lens. It's my favorite MFT lens for live production because it has great optical quality, image stabilization, and it's already very sharp at f4. Also, it has an incredible range. I think it's one in a kind, like 12-100mm f4. With such a good optical quality, I don't think that there's an equivalent on the market. And if you're looking for a good telephoto lens, I'd go for the Panasonic Lumix Leica 50-200. Of course, these lenses are a bit expensive, so if there are any other lenses that you like and you would like to recommend to others, feel free to let everyone know in the comments. Of course, the B4 lens mount would have been ideal, but these broadcast lenses are quite big and good lenses are quite expensive. So I'd rather see that type of sensor and mount in a V2 version of the URSA broadcast maybe, it would make more sense. Although the camera is not designed for this type of lens, I did try to put a B4 lens on this camera using a photodiox adapter here. And as you can see, so like you can fit one of those lenses on this camera. However, due to the smaller image circle of the lens, I got a horrible vignetting effect. That maybe could be solved if Blackmagic added a crop mode on the camera. Besides, the electronics of the lens are incompatible with the Micro Four Thirds electronic system, so I wasn't able to drive the focus, iris and zoom of the lens electronically. So I would love to see a proper B4 to MFT adapter combined to some sort of crop mode from Blackmagic. I have only tested the Pro version of the Studio Camera 4K, but the Plus version is essentially a stripped down version of the Pro camera. In terms of I/O, you only get one 12-volt power input, an HDMI output and two USB-C connections, as well as a 3.5mm jack, mic and phone connection in the Plus version. Also, the screen of the Plus model is a little inferior, I guess it's lower priced. It has a 600 nits brightness instead of 2000 nits on the Pro model. I'd say the Plus model targets the ATEM Mini users, whereas the Pro model is more geared towards users that have higher end ATEM models. I didn't have the opportunity to test the Studio Converter and the zoom and focus remotes at that stage, since they will only be available in October, but we are familiar with the Fujinon remotes that look very similar. And I can tell you that these are invaluable. So I was surprised to see Blackmagic making those at a much lower price, because these cost thousands of dollars. Besides, just as the F1, F2 and F3 shortcuts next to the LCD screen, you can assign quick toggles on function buttons on these remotes to show the program view, to start the recording for instance, or to push to talk for talkback without leaving your hands from the tripod. The Studio Converter looks very promising as well, because it allows you to pass the video signal of the camera, the return video from the ATEM, the camera control information, the talkback and the power in one single Ethernet cable in 4K. So this will unquestionably help with setup and backup times. Also, we will be able to access talkback information using the connector on the backside, as I mentioned earlier. In a nutshell, I think it's an excellent camera, which is perfectly suited for live production. I really see it as a pocket 4K, but packed with all the additional features that are invaluable for live production, including the big 7-inch bright screen, the broadcast connections, the 4K HDMI output, the big Tolly light, talkback, program view, remote control, zoom and focus demand, 10G Ethernet link that has everything in one cable, etc, etc. So I think Blackmagic has done a great job on that one. If you have the old studio cameras that were released a while ago, or you plan to invest into whole new cameras and you don't have any Blackmagic cameras yet, the upgrade is definitely worth the cost. If you already have more recent like Blackmagic 4K or 6K cameras, you won't get any additional improvement in image quality, and they are already remotely controllable with the ATEM. But yeah, it's worth considering each and every additional feature and improvements in the workflow to see whether it's worth the upgrade, since it will strongly depend on your use case. There are a few drawbacks I would like to point out, and these are the non-tiltable screen and the fact that you cannot record anything other than Blackmagic Raw Ultra HD on the USB-C hard drive. Also, I didn't see any option to play back the files that have been recorded. I also really miss the old times when you could just trigger autofocus with a short press on the LCD screen. At some point, Blackmagic turned that into a long press, and there is no option to set it back to a short brace. I do have a few suggestions to make to Blackmagic. One limitation is that there are only 4 micro four thirds lenses on the market that have zoom servos built in, and I think these lenses are not very good quality, both in terms of optics and in terms of zoom control. However, there are many more micro four thirds lenses that have a good built-in focus motor. To address this issue, I think it would be great if Blackmagic released a zoom motor. And yeah, when I look at the 15mm rail system that you can put into the quick release mount, maybe that is something that could be on the way, I don't know. Also, it would be very nice if we could use B4 lenses on this camera as well, so it would be awesome to see a proper lens adapter that would have both a good optical conversion and an electronic conversion from the B4 lens system to the MFT system. I don't know whether this is technically possible though. Lastly, loads of us are waiting for a successor to the Blackmagic Micro Studio 4K that has recently been discontinued, and looking at the design of the camera, it could mean something is on the way as well. But of course we have no clue on Blackmagic's development, so we'll just wait and see. That's all I have to say. I like to finish by saying that we did purchase the camera. It has not been sent to us for free. We make live products as well that help you enhance your live production workflow and improve your production value. So feel free to check out our website at middlethings.co. Thanks a lot for watching, goodbye, and see you soon.